All right, we need to talk about a critical Node.js vulnerability that could literally crash your production servers as we speak. Now, this isn't some minor bug, it's a really fundamental flaw with a huge blast radius, so let's get right into what you need to know. Okay, let's just dive straight in, because this is not a minor issue. The official Node.js team themselves have flagged this as impacting, and I'm quoting here, virtually every production Node.js app. I mean, that's a massive statement. It means there's a very good chance your applications are at risk right now.
So what's the worst that can happen? Well, an attacker can use this flaw to trigger a complete denial of service. We're talking about a hard crash of your server. And all it takes is sending some unsanitized input that your app just isn't ready for. And just like that, your services are completely offline.
So how does this actually work? Why is something that should be a totally manageable error turning into such a dangerous, fatal flaw? Let's get into the mechanics of it.
It all starts with a classic Stack Overflow. Now, normally, Node.js is pretty smart about this. It does its best to recover by throwing an error that your code can actually catch and handle gracefully, keeping your server up and running. This is exactly what you'd expect to happen.
But the whole situation completely changes when a specific, very low-level API called async hooks is in the picture. This is an incredibly powerful tool for things like monitoring application performance, but its involvement here is what turns a simple bug into a critical vulnerability. And this comparison just lays it all out perfectly. So look at the left. That's the normal process. A Stack Overflow happens, an error gets thrown, and your app deals with it. Simple. But now look at the right. When async_hooks is active, that catchable error, it's just never thrown. Instead, the whole process just dies. It exits with code 7, and poof, your server is gone. No warning, no chance to recover.
So you might be thinking, well, I don't use async hooks directly in my code, so I'm safe. And that's the really tricky part here. The blast radius of this thing is enormous, all because of how the Node ecosystem is built.
So just take a look at this list of names. If you're using Next.js or React Server Components or pretty much any major APM tool like Datadog or New Relic, you're vulnerable. And why is that? It's because they all rely on a feature called AsyncLocalStorage, which is built directly on top of async hooks, and it inherits this exact same fatal flaw. And get this isn't a new problem. This bug has been hiding in Node.js ever since version 8 came out way back in 2017. That means literally years of versions are affected. And the crucial part is that versions 8 through 18 are now end of life, which means they will not be getting a patch for this, ever. Okay, so now for the most important part. What do we do about it? The good news is the Node.js team has laid out a really clear path forward to protect your applications. Officially, this vulnerability is being tracked as CVE-2025-59466, and it's been given a CVSS score of 7.5 out of 10, which puts it squarely in the high severity category. And that score isn't just some arbitrary number. It really reflects how easy it is for an attacker to exploit this and the severe impact, a total server crash, of a successful attack. So here's the bottom line. You have to update. If you are on a supported LTS or current release of Node.js, you need to upgrade to these specific patched versions you see right here, or of course anything newer. This is the only way to get the official fix. The patch itself is actually pretty elegant. It doesn't magically prevent the Stack Overflow from happening. What it does is it restores the correct behavior. So now, when the engine runs out of stack space, it properly rethrows the error, which means your code can catch it again, just like it always should have. So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, the story gets a little more nuanced when you actually look at how the Node.js team itself is talking about this whole problem. And that brings up a really interesting question. Is this technically a bug, or is it a security vulnerability? Believe it or not, the answer isn't as simple as you might think. Yeah, the official reasoning here is fascinating. The Node.js team is calling this fix a mitigation for unspecified behavior, not a patch for a vulnerability. And you know what? Technically, they're right. Stack Overflow behavior isn't actually defined in the official spec, and the V8 engine itself doesn't classify it as a security problem. But, and this is a big but, because the real-world impact was so severe, they wisely chose to treat it with the urgency of a full-blown security release. But look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you call it, a bug, a flaw, a mitigation, the call to action is exactly the same. For developers, for server providers, for library maintainers, the recommendation is urgent and it is crystal clear. Update your Node.js versions immediately. And this brings us to a final thought.
This whole event is just a powerful reminder of how complex systems can interact in unexpected ways. A seemingly minor bug, when combined with a specific low-level tool, created a critical server-crashing flaw that went completely unnoticed for years. So it leaves us with a really critical question to ask ourselves. What seemingly harmless bugs might be ticking time bombs in our own code?